Hello, everyone. I'm Amis Akbari. I'm the Executive Director of the Atkinson Center at the University of Toronto, and I'm joining you here from the traditional territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit. As an immigrant to Canada, I am mindful of what it means to build a life here and of the responsibilities that come with living and working on this land. I want to acknowledge today the Indigenous communities who have cared for this land for generations, and I recognize that we are all joining here from different parts of the country. So thank you, everyone, for joining us today. It is my pleasure to introduce Melissa Hilton. Melissa is the Extended Day Manager at the Waterloo Region District School Board in Ontario and was previously a Child Care Centre Supervisor with the Municipal Centres at the Region of Waterloo and has worked in the early years sector, both in the school boards and in the child care programs for 16 years. I'd also like to introduce Nick Landry, who is the Superintendent of Business Services and Treasurer of the Board, and has been leading the Extended Day program since its implementation in 2010. Nick is a strong advocate for school-age childcare services and innovative solutions to support communities. Under his leadership, the Extended Day programs have provided an additional 4,000 childcare spaces for school-age children in Waterloo. Both Melissa and Nick are passionate about sharing their perspectives and experience with the Extended Day model as a scalable solution for regions experiencing challenges meeting the demand. So without further ado, I'll pass it on to Melissa.
Thank you, Amis, and thank you to the Atkinson Center and B2C2 for organizing this webinar so that we can share our experience. I also want to thank you to the Atkinson Center and B2C2 as well as CUPE for funding 3 videos that we filmed in Extended Day programs in the spring of 2025 that highlight the benefits of the Extended Day model for children and families. And as a follow-up to this webinar, we will share the links for all 3 videos, as well as a resource that we're putting together alongside the Ottawa Carleton District School Board and Waterloo Catholic District School Board for school boards who are interested in piloting an Extended Day program. This implementation guide will provide some supports and next steps for you as a resource. So Nick and I are happy to join you today to share our experiences with the Extended Day model at the Waterloo Region District School Board. And I think it makes sense for us to provide some background information for context around some of the challenges that we were experiencing in 2009 and share our strategy for an Extended Day pilot, and then post-implementation, some of the benefits that we're seeing for children and families in our region. And we will have some time at the end for questions if anybody has questions. So I'd like to start with back in 2009, some of the challenges that we were experiencing here at the WRDSB with school-age childcare spaces. At that time, we had a patchwork system where we had 7 different childcare providers offering before and after school programs in some of our schools. We collected some data around the number of students in JK to grade 2 who had access to school-age services and learned that less than 9% of our students had access to childcare programs co-located in schools. The programs that did existed in communities that scored higher on the neighborhood economic index, so higher earning communities, and programs had long waiting lists. And so we looked at that data along with our service system manager, and we learned about Pascal's vision with our best future in mind of integrating childcare services in schools. In 2009, within this patchwork system, we had a variety of childcare fees depending on the provider. We had programs that operated on different dates, operated at different hours. And so depending on the program that the family was enrolled in, the service would be different. The challenges for our childcare providers was a high staff turnover because the RECEs that were scheduled into before and after school programs were working split shifts. And so there were challenges with retention, and we were seeing program closures across our system. And so in 2010, with the implementation of full day kindergarten in Ontario, we onboarded a new work group, DECE, so Designated Early Childhood Educators. And at the same time, Charles Pascal released his report with Our Best Future in Mind, which encouraged school boards to offer a fee-for-service program where families could opt in to an extended day program that would be directly operated by school boards. And it would offer a seamless day for children where the DECEs who work in kindergarten would also lead a before school program and an after school program for families. So we received support from trustees and senior leadership to implement a pilot extended day program. We worked with our service system manager to select neighborhoods that were in high demand that had never had access to childcare services. So looking at schools that were underserved, we selected 3 locations and we implemented a pilot extended day program. At that time, we had to create job descriptions. We had to look at the shifts for DECEs and create this model that we were going to pilot in our schools. What we did is we took the DECE who would typically work 8 to 3:30, working in the kindergarten program, and we adjusted that shift to 6:45 to 2:15 so that they could offer a before school program from 7 a.m. until school start and then transition into the kindergarten program. So that was a 35-hour work week, full-time position, working with the school board, but working part of their day in before school and the rest of their day in the kindergarten program. We also hired a second DECE position working 10:45 a.m. until 6:15 p.m. And they would start their day in the kindergarten program and then transition to operate the after-school program, which would operate until 6 p.m. So families would have access to childcare at the school from 7 a.m. right until 6 p.m. We couldn't have implemented the pilot without the support of our service system manager at the time, Nancy Dickinson, and today Barb Cardot with the Region of Waterloo. And for families, this meant they would now have access to childcare right in their neighborhood, at their child's school, in a familiar environment, led by qualified early childhood educators who are part of the school team. So that pilot went very well. We expanded over the years. We grew to 6 programs, 9 programs, 13. And today we operate programs in 75 schools supporting 4,000 children. And our programs are subsidy eligible. So we do have a service agreement with the Region of Waterloo so that families who qualify for fee assistance can receive childcare subsidy to help with the childcare costs. As we've expanded programs over the years, we've made some revisions to program operations. For example, in 2022, when the province of Ontario signed on to the Canada-wide Early Learning and Childcare Funding Plan, we learned that in order to opt in to the CWELC program, our programs had to be licensed under the Child Care and Early Years Act. Up to that point, we were operating under the Education Act. And so at that time, we met with trustees in April of 2022 and received approval to start licensing our school board operated extended day programs. We met with our childcare partners to learn about the licensing process and best practices. We also met with our service system manager and received their support in moving forward with licensing our board operated extended day programs. And we started the licensing process in May, and all of our 75 locations were licensed by August so that we could open our doors in September of 2022 as a licensed program under the Child Care and Early Years Act so that families would benefit from the reduced fees offered under the Canada-wide Early Learning and Childcare Funding Plan. And thousands of families are benefiting from the reduced rate as a result. Our extended day programs are inclusive and support children with disabilities and accommodation needs so that if a student enrolls in the program and has a medical condition or an individualized plan, we use the same plan that the school uses. So we're fully integrated in board policies and procedures, in the plan of care templates that the schools use, so that the child receives the same supports that they receive during the day after school. They have access to shared space, sensory rooms, medical equipment, the same plan of care that the educators are using during the core day is used after school. So it's that seamless experience for the child, for all children. And I'd say that's one of the strengths of school board operated programs is that children receive care in a familiar environment, in a familiar classroom. The program is operated directly by the school board, and so policies and procedures, guidelines are familiar. And the educators working in before and after care are part of that school team who know the children and the families well. Our programs access libraries, gyms, the outdoor play space. We spend up to 2 hours daily outside supporting children with physical activity. And so we're not only operating in the kindergarten room, we're accessing other spaces within the school. And it is a play-based program. So that question comes up a lot where, is that a long day for children to be spending in school? The program's operating out of a fully equipped kindergarten classroom that has play materials. And those materials are supplemented by the extended day budget to include play materials for older children as well. So I think that's one of the benefits of the program. Initially, when we first implemented extended day, we were operating the program for students in junior kindergarten to grade 2 and started to receive feedback from families with children in grade 3 to 6 that they also needed access to childcare. And so we've since expanded the program so that we now offer childcare for students in JK all the way up to grade 6. And we're operating in every one of our schools across the Waterloo Region District School Board. In 75 locations, we're offering the school board operated extended day program. And in 24 locations, we have partnerships with childcare providers who have purpose-built childcare programs for infants, toddlers, and preschoolers co-located in the school. And in some of those locations, they're also offering the before and after school program. So we have a hybrid model where we've partnered with our childcare providers to look at the locations where they can offer programs. And then in the remaining locations, the school board will step in and operate the program to ensure that families are supported. So 100% of our schools now have the before and after school program for students in JK to grade 6. As part of that model where we're partnering with our school board operated programs and childcare providers, we have created an agreement with childcare providers where we've outlined the terms and conditions for services so that our fees are aligned and our operating dates and our operating hours, because we want to provide that consistent service to families in the community right across the region. Today, post-implementation, we're not seeing the same challenges that we were experiencing in 2009. We have achieved an integrated model that was outlined in Pascal's vision, where we have services in every school. Neighborhood no longer determines which families have access to services and which don't. So we have improved access to childcare for school-age children here in Waterloo Region. And from our experience, this model is a viable solution for areas that are experiencing challenges with school age programs closing and having difficulty meeting the demand for families. This model works, and we've been using it for 16 years. Our coterminous board is also offering the extended day program, as well as the school boards in Ottawa, Toronto. More recently, Halton District School Board implemented a pilot 2 years ago. That's gone really well, and they're expanding their program this year. So I know one of the questions that comes forward from school boards that reach out to me experiencing school age program closures is whether or not the program is financially viable. We set our parent fee annually, and the parent fee covers the operating costs so that our programs operate at cost recovery and we're not operating at a deficit. We also have a service agreement with the Children's Services at the Region of Waterloo to offer childcare subsidies to families who qualify. So many families qualify for a reduced rate, even if, if they're not part of the CWEL funding program, they still pay a reduced rate because they receive a fee subsidy through the Region of Waterloo if they qualify. And so that rate is determined annually with, our finance team, and it covers all of the costs for operating the program. Nick Landry will talk a little bit more about our fee structure and our financial viability. But one of the trends that we're seeing here in this area in southwestern Ontario is more and more childcare providers closing their school age programs. So we lost 11 third-party operated programs in 2019. That impacted hundreds of families. And we lost another 6 programs in 2022, also impacting hundreds of families. And the challenges that providers are sharing with us is that with a shortage of ECEs, they're relocating some of their school age RECEs to their infant, toddler, preschool programs to expand those spaces, which is great for families. But it's presenting a challenge where school age programs are closing. And so here at the WRDSB, when that happens, we will work with our childcare partners to ensure that we can step in and offer the program and there's no gap in service for families. And we were able to do that at those 17 locations to ensure that all programs, all schools will continue to offer a before and after school program for families. Nick, I'm wondering if I can turn it over to you to talk a little bit about how we set the extended day fee.
Sure. Thanks, Melissa. Is my sound okay?
Yes, sounds great.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Nick Landry, and as mentioned, I'm the superintendent of business and treasurer for the school board. I've had the privilege of being a part of this extended day, adventure since 2009, 2010. So how we set the fee on an annual basis is really it's set out in regulation, and when the Ministry of Education initially introduced FDK and extended day, they did provide us with a template or a framework to establish our fees. And really what the emphasis is on is that making sure we set our fees, so that we're not losing money on the program and that we're also not making, a profit. We're not in this to make money. We're in it to cover our costs. We really, are focused on just identifying the incremental cost of operating the program. So obviously, salaries and benefits for our program, it's about 75% of our fee structure is related to salaries and benefits. It's a little bit lower than like our school board cost structure, where salaries and benefits are about 85%. But it's still, vast majority of it is salaries and benefits. And that would be for the ECEs as well as the EAs, as well as for, any central support that's required. We have administrative overhead like any organization does. So those costs are captured and included in our fee. And that would include everything from some of the internal HR support that we have, some of the internal finance support that we have, as well as Melissa's team and the supervisors who centrally support programs in schools and really support our principals and educators. Beyond that, we have our, what we call our general operating costs. So Melissa spoke to the materials. We also provide food in the program, and and we also have our utilities. So we wanted to make sure that the additional strain on our facilities was captured in the fee. So we have, our program, I'll call it our program, pays rent just like any other operator would, and that's built into our fee structure. So the board programs aren't getting a discount in terms of what we're paying for the space that we're utilizing. And that covers utilities, custodial support, supplies, all of those things that we would otherwise pass on to any other childcare provider or community group that would use our space. And then beyond that, we have our special education support, which Melissa did speak to. So there's a portion of our fee that reflects the additional costs that we incur to have that intensive support where it's needed for students. And all of these things, contribute to our fee, which has been fairly steady since the introduction of the program. I was just looking back at some of our early fee structures. We started at $29 a day, and I think it's fluctuated, as low as about 24 and a half dollars a day. And I think now we're back up to 30, 32 or 31 and a half dollars a day. So it's been fairly consistent over the 15 years. And then we also have, some very minor costs related to, things like merchant fees. So when parents pay with credit card and if we have uncollectible debt. But really, these again are just the incremental costs that we're incurring to operate the program. And I think we've done a better job over time as we've been able to scale up the program to capture some of the additional costs related to HR and finance. Like, I'll be quite honest, when we started this program and we only had 4 schools and I think total revenue of $239,000, there wasn't a lot of room available for us to capture some of those other costs. So some of this was done, it was, as Melissa said, supported by our board of trustees and executive. So some of this was done off of the side of people's desks, to be quite honest, when we started. But now that we've been able to scale the program up, we're actually able to capture those costs. We have hired additional staff, whether it be in finance or HR, to support this. It might only be 0.5 of their role, but it's dedicated 0.5 or 0.25, whatever the case may be. And that way we're making sure that our normal day-to-day operations as a school board are not being impacted by the operation. So I think that's kind of what I had to share for now. So I'll turn it back to you.
Thanks, Nick. And I think that is one of the benefits with school boards operating extended day programs. We can leverage the infrastructure that we have. I work with our communications department for website design, human resources for staffing and hiring, facility services regularly. So, school boards, we don't only have the spaces, the classrooms, playgrounds, libraries, gymnasiums, but we also have infrastructure that can support program operations. So I don't know, Emis, if we want to open it up to some questions from the group.
Yes, I think that would be great. I'm going to just open up the chat as well. For those of you that prefer to put your questions in the chat. Any questions? So we have one coming in from City of Windsor. Alicia, what helped to create the initial buy-in from the school board administration?
Want me to take that one, Melissa? Or...
Yeah, I could talk about the training post-pilot implementation, but from what I recall, I was a supervisor in extended day in 2010 when we were implementing programs. We had a very strong commitment from senior leadership. Our director at the time, Linda Faby, Mary Lou Mackey, Scott Podreberic, Nick. to support this program and strong messaging out to school leaders around the benefits to children and families and that equity piece, ensuring that all schools could have access to childcare services. I remember when we implemented the pilot, Scott and I would host information sessions for school administrators in the morning and after school, where we walked through Pascal's report and we talked about the benefits to families, to women entering the workforce when childcare services were available. And so there was a lot of capacity building during that time over the first 4 years.
I know that from our conversations at the Atkinson, many regions that have considered this have gotten a little bit of pushback from school boards. So th I think that's really helpful. How did the rest of the childcare sector respond, and how did you manage that?
I can start, Nick, and jump in if you want to share. Initially, it was a difficult time because there was a lot of transition in the early years. Because the implementation of extended day coincided with the implementation of full day kindergarten, that was a huge shift for childcare providers who were providing childcare to 3 and 4 year olds who would now be going to kindergarten. But over time, that landscape has changed, and we are working in collaboration with our childcare providers to try to meet the demand. And we're learning from our childcare providers best practices that we can implement as a licensed program. And so we've got strong partnerships with our providers who understand when they give me a call and tell me that, they're not able to offer the program next year. We work together on a shared message to families. We work together to ensure there's no gap in service for families. So I think when school boards can partner with childcare providers and work together to look at where services can expand, then we're better supporting the community.
Um, I,
Sorry.
there was a hand up. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Nick.
Yeah, I was just gonna say before we even got into operating the program or modeling or running the pilot, I think some of the data that Melissa spoke to earlier, and I remember presenting this to the Board of Trustees, because some of the pushback from the community was we're going to lose our childcare provider, our local provider, and it wasn't about us replacing any childcare providers. It was about filling gaps. And when you show them that 12 of our, I think, 89 schools at the time had childcare, 9% of our kids had childcare, and you could literally, we would show them a map and show them where the coverage is. And as my friend Barb likes to reference it, there was a childcare desert in the middle of our region. The high SES areas were well served, and outside of that, there was not much. So people couldn't really argue with the data that supported the case. And it was in the interest of kids. And once they bought into that, the ship sailed. So.
Thank you. Kayla, you had your hand up. I don't know if you changed your mind or your question was answered. I apologize, I missed you.
No, that's okay. I figured out how to use the chat, so I typed it
Oh,
in, but I can still ask out loud. I was just curious. I had a lot of questions actually, but I'll just ask one. Are the DECEs or the designated early childhood educators who joined this new platform and being employed by the school boards, did they get the same I would say like advantages as being in the school board as like a classroom teacher, so being a part of the union and getting paid professional development and learning. And then I was also curious about the average salary of those educators who kind of joined in on this model.
Thank you. Great question. The extended day model is a huge benefit to the profession. We have an additional 165 full-time public sector unionized DECE positions because of this program. They are receiving the same benefits as the DECEs who work in kindergarten. They're on the same salary grid. The board will post positions as DECE positions, but the shifts are assigned every year by administrators. So you're not hired into a core shift or AM or PM shift. You're hired as a DECE and the shifts are assigned annually by the school administrator. So most of our DECEs will cycle through a core shift and, the other two shifts for extended day. They're all full-time 35 hours a week, so there's no split shifts. And we follow the provincial grid for salaries for DECEs. A lot of benefits, so yeah.
A few questions coming in. Why don't we go, Sherry, you first, and then I'm going to move to the chat for a moment.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation, and special hello to my friend Nick. Just wanted to ask a couple questions about from a school board perspective, as one of those boards that's struggling to find providers, has traditionally used third-party providers. What we're hearing is in our rural area, we're primarily rural. There's lots of factors that are impacting things like staffing, et cetera, which is creating some challenges for us. I know Waterloo Region is primarily urban, but there is a rural component. So just wanted to hear your perspective on success of, program offerings, both staffing, being able to staff the rural schools, and also parental uptake based on the fees for your rural schools only. If you can add some commentary, I'd love to hear that.
Yeah, we do have economy of scale, as Nick mentioned, where we've got large programs in urban areas that are covering the costs of operating in some of our rural communities. We're running programs in Linwood and Floridale and in Elmira to support every school. Enrollment is lower in some of our smaller rural schools, but we are currently operating one of our largest programs in Elmira. And as I said, because of the fee subsidies, families who qualify for fee assistance can access that. So that hasn't been as much of an issue. But yeah, we're committed to offering the program at every school. And I think, as Nick mentioned, that we've evolved over time as we've grown to be able to do that. We didn't start out there right away. So that will happen over time.
Right, so we're moving on to the chat. There's quite a few questions coming in. We'll begin here from Lakehead. Our childcare survey for lower SES areas often doesn't indicate that childcare is required, but if it's available, we see it will be well used. Do you have a threshold for a certain number of children signing up before you would open? Also, do you maintain a wait list?
Nick, do you recall the initial threshold? I know we started with a threshold at implementation for our pilot. I don't know if it was 15 or we had a number that would determine viability for program operation. But as we've evolved over time, as Nick mentioned, we no longer have a threshold. We have programs running in some of our rural communities with 5 children enrolled. And those families have told us that that's the difference of being able to go to work. They've never had childcare in their community. So we're committed to that, and we're able to do that now with 75 programs. But initially, we did have a threshold that we set as a board to ensure the program was viable.
Yeah, I can't recall what that threshold was initially, Melissa. I think in the first 4 or 5 schools, it might have been 10 or 15.
Okay.
But then as we expanded our program offerings, and I think the commitment, I can't remember the threshold, but I think our approach was once we committed to introducing a program, we were committed to not removing it. So once a program is in place, we have never closed a program. I think we've gotten down as low as 1 or 2 kids in a program, but we balance on the program overall. We don't try and balance by school because it'd be too volatile for families and for schools. It becomes a part of the school culture. Staff get used to it. So if you're constantly introducing and removing programs, that's not good for anyone. So once we committed to a program, we committed that we wouldn't remove it basically under any circumstances, unless there was 0 kids registered, then you don't have to run it. But we were a believer of if you build it, they will come, and they have definitely come.
There's a question here about, Nick, did you say that there is a budget line for inclusion, and what are examples of the costs that that might incur?
I think this might have been in reference to our special education component of our fee. And it is, so I'm just looking here, it's about 3.2% of our fee is dedicated to special education. So that's the additional staff, EAs, that we will bring in to support students if they need it. So I don't off the top of my head know what that equates to in terms of a dollar amount, but we do have funding built in to cover that. And Melissa has that budget, and they deploy supports where they need to based on the child's needs and discussions with administrators and educators.
Yeah. And some examples of those costs would be additional staff to work in the after-school program. We would reach out to the educational assistants who work at the school during the day. If there's an educator who supports the child during the day who's interested in picking up extra hours after school, an hour or two, then that could be an additional cost to support the child. Another example is SIA equipment. So we have purchased some equipment for the after school program, or if the equipment is stored. We have a couple of students who are bused to an extended day in their homeschool area, and their equipment is at another school. Then we would purchase, for example, a trampoline or something to support them that's recommended through the CERT.
And would you be able to share the fees? How did operators respond to the requirements to follow the same operating days, hours, and rates?
So we built those terms and conditions into our agreement with operators to lease space with the WRDSB. We identified all of the differences that were occurring across our system to operators. We meet with them every 3 months, and we talked about all of those differences for families and just wanting to create a consistent system. We started talking about that about a year before the changes were in effect. And then we built those changes into the service agreement. So if you are an operator with the WRDSB, these are the conditions. Programs are inclusive. All children can participate. We're not turning anyone away. Programs are open till 6. If you're determining a site is viable, it's viable for the year. You can't close the site mid-year. You have to offer before and after care. So just creating those parameters so that we have consistency across the system for families.
And what I would just add to that is we have had situations where an operator has, for a variety of reasons, chosen to walk away from a particular site. And in those circumstances, the board has stepped in and started our own directly operated program. But once we do that, that site is no longer available to an operator. So, once they've demonstrated that they can't, and sometimes there's often good reasons why they can't, but once we step in, it does not return to an operator.
And for that consistency, we don't want to be changing providers every year in a school and for families. I'm wondering if we can circle back to the second part of the previous question around determining demand or viability. I know that school boards survey families and for viability each independently. We've taken a look at some of the different surveys that are out there. I don't know that we're collecting that information in a good way that really reflects the demand for families. As Nick mentioned, we built the program and families are using it, and there is a demand for childcare in every community. So yeah, I think that part of that issue is looking at the way that we're collecting that information as well.
Thank you. Can you speak to what happens on PD days?
So we have 7 different professional development days that are built into our school year calendar. 5 of those days are set aside for mandatory training for educators, and our DECEs participate in that training, health and safety, BMS, school training. So there's 2 days that are report card writing PD days, and those days extended day programs operate, and we offer a full day extended day program for families. And families can drop off their child in the morning and pick them up, at the end of the day. And we create a schedule where all of our DECEs and EAs will work one of the 2 PD days that the extended day program operates. We worked through different models for PD days over the years. We started operating all 7-day PD days as camp programs, but then our staff were not receiving mandatory training. And so we worked with our labor partners to settle on operating on the days when PD is not being offered to staff. And so those are the days that we run full day PD camp programs. We also operate over winter break camp week, 5 days where we're running a full day, and then March break as well.
Great. A really, I think, important question here, although they're all really great questions, is that, Melissa, you mentioned that this wouldn't be possible without the support of your SSM. Can you share how your SSM supported you and what made the biggest impacts when you were getting off the ground?
I think one of the things that deters school board is the unknown. Like, this is something new. You have to build a program. But right from the beginning, at the time it was Nancy Dickinson and currently Barb Cardo, they supported us along the way. They would give us some guidance and direction. Even when I recently went through licensing in 2022, I can remember calling Barb and leaning on her and her team. We meet with the managers on her team regularly to discuss, questions that we have around funding that's available. And yeah, just great partnership there. And I think that's had a huge impact in the success of our program.
What is the split in the extended day in the third-party operated programs?
So we have 17 schools that are third-party operated. The number's decreasing every year. So in the initial implementation, it was more third-party, and then as we grew, it was kind of 50%. But the number is decreasing each year. And so currently we offer 75 schools as board operated extended day. And we have 24 purpose-built childcare centers. And those used to be all programs that ran their own before and after school programs. But even those locations are closing their before and after school programs and then using those staff to expand infant, toddler, preschool spaces. And then we're stepping in and we're currently running 6 before and after school extended day programs at third-party locations where there's childcare co-located in the school.
Great. So can you talk a little bit about the licensing procedure in terms of meeting qualifications, and also to be clear, the 4 and 5-year-olds are receiving CWELC rates because you're licensed. If you can clarify that around the licensing.
Correct. Yes. So we are participating in the CWELC program, and so 4 and 5-year-olds are paying that reduced fee. And when we learned that we had to license our programs under the Child Care and Early Years Act, we met with the program advisors at the licensing branch to learn about the steps that we had to take in order to achieve that. We had to open an account with the child care licensing system and apply for a license for all 75 schools. That there was a fee associated with that, depending on the size of the program, $75 to $200 for that licensing fee. And then we had to work with our program advisors to implement policies like a waitlist policy or supervision of children policy. So I think that in the end, there was 13 policies that we developed alongside our program advisors. Then we trained our educators who are going to be working now under the Child Care and Early Years Act. We trained them on the new policies, revised ratios of, instead of, we formerly operated at a ratio of 1 educator for 15 children. That transitioned to 1 educator to 13 children across all of our programs. And we also provided training on serious occurrences, our program statement, and public health practices. Then over the summer, July and August, public health came out, inspected every one of our schools. And so we received approval from public health. And then our licensing inspections also occurred over the summer, and we were licensed by August. And as part of that process, we do have to meet all the same requirements under the Child Care and Early Years Act, and all 75 of our programs are inspected annually. And we work closely with the licensing branch to update policies and procedures and meet new guidelines as they're implemented.
Thank you. Recently, a report was released by B2C2 around the number of directors' approvals across the province and the huge increase over the recent years. One of the questions are around how many of your DECEs are being filled by positions with a director's approval?
So all of our 75 programs within each of those programs, we have varied enrollment from, as we mentioned, 5 to over 150 students and operating in 5 classrooms, for example. So each of our sections, each classroom, the program is led by a qualified designated early childhood educator. We don't have any non-qualified ECEs. We do have emergency supply staff, but we mostly rely on our qualified DECE supply pool to fill any absences. But in terms of staffing and our staffing model, every classroom, every program will have a DECE lead in their section, and then the second staff is an educational assistant or a before and after school support staff.
Great. Can you talk about wait lists? What do your wait lists look like for your programs?
So from 2010 until 2022, we didn't have wait lists, and a family could go online and start in our program in 2 weeks. And as we needed to, we would add staff to the program. Once we offered the reduced fee under CWELC, the demand increased exponentially. And for the first time, we started to see a wait list in high demand areas. And so our wait list across our 75 schools is currently 300 children waiting, to access childcare spaces. And so we do have a wait list policy, and we follow that policy when offering out spaces. I would love to see that number reduced, but we're not able to expand programs beyond the number of kindergarten classrooms that we have. It is an issue with how, the formula that we use for staffing and just even facility space. So we have a number of sites where we have 4 kindergarten classrooms at the school. We're in those 4 classrooms, but we have 30 or 40 families on the wait list. And so there's enough demand for us to open another section, but we can't do that.
The Atkinson Center did an evaluation on the extended day seamless program, and what we found was that principals played a key role in the relationship between the kindergarten staff and many components. Do you have any training for principals for their buy-in as expansion occurred?
That's a great question, Emise. And yes, we work very closely with school administrators. I think one of the strengths of our model is that we have put in place central supports. We have a team of supervisors who partner with school principals to be the designate when emergencies arise after school, before school. They manage all of the staffing, for monitoring absences for that early morning shift. The AM supervisors support coverage for those shifts. So we've put in place a central support team. That's my team here. We work out of the education center. I'm the manager. I have 10 supervisors. The supervisors work in teams of 2, an AM supervisor who starts their day at 6:30 and works until 2. They work in the before school programs, auditing licensing requirements, mentoring staff, supporting onboarding, monitoring coverage for staff who are away. And then they share an office space and partner with a PM supervisor who works 10:45 to 6:15. They start their day in the office, completing administrative duties, and then they head out to after school programs, after school, again, supporting staff, auditing licensing requirements. So that central team has really helped take this off the plates of administrators. They know they reach out to us all the time. I've got this issue. Can you come out and support? So we've put that in place for that very reason. And then we have a framework now that we follow where supervisors reach out to school administrators every fall. We go over the extended day model. If they're working at a school that has a third-party provider program, we go over the agreement that we have with that provider, so the principal's aware of the terms and conditions. And then we have regularly set meetings. We meet in the fall, and then we meet again in the spring. We can meet more if the principal would like additional support. During the early implementation days, we did provide training to administrators, like I mentioned earlier, around the benefits of full day kindergarten and the seamless day model. And then more recently, we've built that into those meetings and conversations and resources that we share. The ministry has a great resource right now, working together in a shared space. It's written for school administrators, school board leaders. And so we use that. That's linked right in our agenda when we meet with school principals every fall.
Thank you. Kaylee?
Hello. I just wanted to clarify. You mentioned that there can only be so many programs at a school since you're operating only in the kindergarten spaces. So does that mean that your extended day programs are all mixed age groups with kinder all the way up to grade 6 potentially?
Yes, that's right. So 4 to 12 years old, and depending on the size of the program, so a smaller program that we're operating, for example, with 5 students, they would be mixed. In our larger programs, the educator teams set the groups. So we'll have a program that's, youth development, grades 3 to 6 operating, and that programming will look different. And then we'll have the other groups will be JK to grade 2, for example. But in our smaller programs, single sections, it's mixed groupings. Yeah.
You spoke about PD days. Can you speak about, is this year-round? What happens during the summer and the holidays?
So we're not currently operating camp programs in the summer. I know some school boards are. Ottawa is currently offering summer camp programs. I believe TDSB's extended day program is offering summer camp programs. I would love to see us offer summer camps. I know that families need care in the summer months, and educators are also looking for work during that time. Currently, one of the challenges for us is the school year is defined within our collective agreement. That's not the case for every school board, and it's defined as September to June. So.
Thank you. There's a few questions around ratio. One is what does the ratio look like, but specifically, what is the main driver to become licensed? Is it so that 4 and 5-year-olds could be eligible for CWELC funding? And how do things like the ratios differ under the provincial licensing requirements versus extended day where what was happening before?
So we made a decision as a school board to operate under the kindergarten ratios. We wanted the rules to be scalable across a large system, and we didn't want to create different rules for ratios across schools. And that was important when we met with our labor partners as well, that, they were very supportive of us licensing the program so that families would benefit from the reduced fee. That was the driver. We wanted, we made childcare accessible. Now we want to make it affordable. So opting into CWELC, that was the goal. But when we created guidelines, protocols for staff, we wanted the guidelines to apply across, to be as consistent as possible. And so we licensed our programs under the kindergarten ratio of 1 to 13, regardless of the age groups. And so that's how our licenses are issued by the ministry. And it's served us well. It's worked well for us.
Do you have on-site supervisors?
So all of our supervisors work out of the education center, so head office, but they travel out to schools daily, and we have a system for tracking that to make sure that we're getting out to all of our programs at least every 3 weeks. That we've a formalized process for tracking that, documenting site visits, follow-ups where principals are included, CC'd for their information. And so the supervisors teams of 2 each support 15 schools.
I know we're coming up to time, but I'll ask one more question, even though we have more. Can you talk a little bit about your hiring and staff turnover? We all are dealing with workforce challenges. There's been a few questions around recruitment as well as retention.
Yes, and I think this connects with Kaylee's question earlier around the benefits of working for the school board. These, we receive feedback from applicants all the time that these are desirable positions, full-time positions, working for the ministry, the school board as public sector work. You're unionized here at the WRDSB, the DECEs have a pension plan, benefits. So we do see that we're still receiving applicants to DECE postings. We're not experiencing some of the same challenges with recruitment that I'm hearing from some of our childcare partners. We also have an open supply posting, so that's posted year-round, including over the summer, where we're constantly hiring into our supply pool for DECEs. And then many of those supply DECEs then move into full-time positions with the board. So that's a strategy. We attend job fairs, at our local community college and across really different regions to promote the program. And I think school boards are still considered one of the desirable employers because of the wage grid and all of the benefits. So
Okay, we're 2 minutes away from the end of our webinar. I'd like to thank Melissa and Nick for their time and their expertise. The recording of this session will be circulated to those that registered for the event. As well, our April 23rd follow-up to this webinar will look more around the implementation details of the program. Looking forward to having all of you join. That's at 2 p.m. on Thursday, April 23rd, Eastern Standard Time. We will be also circulating the videos that Melissa mentioned at the beginning of the webinar, 3 separate videos looking at the benefits of the program, the partnership development. I will also circulate the director's approval report by B2C2, as well as the Atkinson Seamless Day evaluation that we did several years ago. And stay tuned, we are developing a manual to support implementation for those that are interested in the program in the coming weeks. So thank you again, everyone, for your time and participation, and we look forward to seeing you in 2 weeks. And thank you again, Melissa and Nick.